try to make sure this will. Some folks gotta get home and get kids in bed, so we're trying to straddle between giving people enough time to get here and making sure we have enough time to lean in. So wanted to go ahead and start by, yeah. So I will choose to. I personally try not to when there are this many people in a room, but I guess I could do that. So 2 things. I said I will, and would you mind moving a little bit closer to me? Okay, so I would prefer. No, I hear you. I said I would prefer to wear my mask. In rooms with this many people, I usually wear a mask. Would you mind if I wear my mask and you move a little closer? Okay, so you need to be able to see my lips. Did we get to work?
Yes.
Okay.
So much better.
Yeah, because then I could be masking and stop. All right, here we go. All right. All right, does this work? All right, great. Usually I would stand, as you can probably all see. That's not a reality right now. So I'll sit, but usually I would stand in front of a group this size and just don't have the ability, physically to do so. So want to go ahead and first introduce myself. My name is Reverend Mariama White Hammond. I'm the Chief of Environment, Energy, and Open Space, which means I oversee the Environment Department and the Parks Department, and also Historic Preservation. I'm going to go ahead and introduce the folks who are here from Parks, and we're going to jump right in because there are a lot of things to discuss and decisions to make. So we have Ryan Woods, who's our commissioner. Kathy Baker Eclipse, who's the Director of Capital Planning.
Can you stand up when you say their names so we can see them?
Sure.
Thank you.
I think everybody else is able to stand. Okay. We have Liza Meyer, our Chief Landscape Architect. Lauren Bryan, who's been a project manager on this and many other projects. Liz Sullivan, who's our Director of External Affairs. Christine Brandel, who's our Community Outreach Coordinator. Maggie Owens, who's one of our planners, but also specifically works on the Urban Forestry Plan. And then Michael Easler, who's a project manager for Weston and Sampson, the design team. And then all right, who's our landscape designer for Weston and Sampson on this project. So those are the folks in the room who are working on the project. Want to spend a little time just laying out sort of what the agenda is for today, what we're gonna try to lean in on. So,
Go back to the.
Yes.
Thank you.
okay,
So it's hard for us to move on. This helps us get.
No
all
problem.
right. Okay, so wanna just check in about what we are talking about. So we have this design process, we'll go through like what the process was, but want to be clear that we are talking specifically in a conversation around trees. We're not going to reopen the design elements that were agreed on last year through the committee process. So we're not talking about resurfacing the basketball court or the field or any of those other things. We're actually only going to specifically be talking in this meeting about trees and about the conversation around trees. Because though all of those other design elements were part of multiple community meetings in which people made agreements and made trade-offs, so we're not going to talk about those things. Okay, well, I'm just saying at this point, the conversation is around trees and what we're doing around trees. Other people came to the table, some of them are here and some of them are not here on some of those other issues. Like, do we have any representation from the school today? Okay, we have one person. Okay, great.
Do I have an impact study? Do you guys have an impact study already done
On which elements?
on the project?
So we're gonna go through a set of things we'll look at, but we are not reopening the whole project. We are
I
opening.
just asked for the impact study that was done. If it's that far along, it must have already happened. If
An impact study on which, like, what do you
the
mean?
environmental impact study of the project on the surroundings.
So,
That's not part of our typical process.
Okay.
So,
You don't have.
no.
Okay, thanks.
So so what I'm saying is like, there was a contingent process around like the fields, whether they would be softball or soccer or kickball, like whether there would be a walking hackathon. People came to compromises and agreements to get nobody got all of what they wanted. But people made some degree, we won't reopen those because we feel like folks did come together to make those decisions. We don't want them to feel like we made an agreement and then we did. Where we are gonna talk about it is,
Trees on the walking path, that's included. So that has to
yeah,
be-
so anything that's impacting where the trees, which trees are coming down, we can talk about those. But we're gonna get into another layer in a second. So I just wanted to be clear, there definitely can be and should be a conversation about process. At what point should we have included conversations about trees? However, what we want most is some clarity about what people want to do moving forward. I am completely open to hosting another meeting that specifically talks about process, at what point trees should come in. And we do have a contract underway around the park right now. So we want to make sure we get clear understanding about how we want to deal with the trees
Health
conversation.
hazards.
Huh?
Health hazards, that doesn't stop the process. The health hazards of what the project might have, if it has not had an impact study. You don't.
So what I'm
even-
saying
do
is-
you- Do you know the health hazards the project will cause?
At this point, my understanding
Chief,
is that as a
sorry.
park.
They want to know if you can repeat the question.
Questions that they can't hear from the.
Okay, so I'm repeating the questions that you asked because the people on Zoom can't necessarily hear. They said, so the question was, if there are health hazards, does that stop the process? The previous question that related to that was there an environmental impact report? And what I said is, no, there wasn't an environmental impact report. That has not been standard process with parks land if we're doing the same thing in the park that we've already done before. And then, if you're asserting that there's a health impact, you can certainly,
No, I'm
go.
not asserting. I asked if it was an impact study, because the process that we're going to talk about,
mm,
the health hazards that the project may cause,
mhm.
you're not willing to talk about, you're only willing to talk about the process that you've gone through already.
No, I said, we're not willing to talk about the process today. What we want to focus on today, we will talk, what I'm saying is, I'm open to another community meeting to talk about process, how we should do it differently in the future. What I'm saying is, in this meeting, what we need most acutely is to figure out what we want to do about the trees in this particular project, because there are already contractors out there. We need to direct what trees, like what we're gonna do with the trees right now. So what I'm saying is, it's not a closing of the conversation about the process, it's just saying, we got an urgent matter tonight, and we're gonna really focus on that. Yep.
Yeah, my name is Derek Evans,
Mhm.
and I'm not going to be disruptive with what you have planned for this presentation.
Mhm.
But I think at the front end, it is important to state that as you go through this,
Mhm.
that between 2 Saturdays ago and today,
Mhm.
a very important trust has been further broken
Mhm.
since our meeting in the rain on Honeysuckle Road
Okay,
2 Saturdays ago, when myself and others, some of whom were here, some of whom were not,
yeah.
were told by you
Mhm.
that, and you acknowledged
Mhm.
that there had been an inadequate discussion process, whatever word we want to use, pertaining to the trees, which is what we were there to talk
Yeah.
about then. And that we agreed that in the ensuing time before this meeting,
Mhm.
that there would be no work of any impact whatsoever on any trees on Honeysuckle Hill
Yeah.
until after there was a community meeting and a re-engage or engage,
Yeah.
initiate discussion and process. And despite that assurance
Mhm.
from you and from your counterpart with the mayor's community engagement office,
Yeah.
the chief of that, another African American sister from the community representing the city with us. Despite those assurances, such work has in fact happened.
Where
And-
has that,
and we
hold,
can-
hold on, I want to pause, because that is not my understanding, so
Pathways leading up to that have been torn up. That might well affect the trees though, on the other side.
wait, hold on, what
From-
pathways?
From,
Honeysuckle Hill.
going up on this.
Pathways that we said did not necessarily have to be ADA this or ADA that have been taken up. Perfect pathways that are, very old and in better condition than most Boston public sidewalks
Mhm.
and functional with culverts on either side of them to manage the runoff have been removed. Okay, a few hundred feet.
Mhm.
Okay, and more importantly, because I understand now we've got a whole big hornet's nest
Mhm.
that we want to manage as far as this force.
Mhm.
But I have to say again to you very clearly, and you have to take it in and keep it in mind with your presentation and anything else that follows,
Mhm.
that the trust that was already broken when the trees were marked without any notice, any expectation, with orange spray paint, in violation of the city's own requirements for how trees are being marked for possible removal on private property and maybe from public property. That trust which was broken and we took an important step on that Saturday to slowly regain.
Mhm.
Okay, by meeting with you, thank you for coming, okay? But that trust has now since been further shattered because that promise was not kept. And so going forward,
Yeah.
it is with very mixed enthusiasm, credibility,
Mhm.
et cetera, that I sit here through whatever's going to transpire tonight.
So, thank you for letting me know. I
Can
think from my perspective, when I left there, I agreed that we would not make any decisions on trees and on Honeysuckle Hill. And I will say, from my perspective, and I hear what you're saying, I called and said, we cannot move forward with the tree conversation for the tree contract. So the tree contractor, we communicated with directly. I'm just trying to understand, Laura, is it a different contractor that we didn't call about the path?
So I was told after that meeting that there were to be no trees.
Hold on.
Come to the mic.
I was unfortunately out of town when that meeting occurred. I was
Lauren,
told
get close.
after-
Lauren.
I was told after that meeting that we were to remove no trees from the site. That is what has happened. I was unfortunately not told that the contractor could not show up and do other work at that same time. And my understanding is he did not go out there. I am double checking with him right now. There are other people on the chat that have said that other than deliveries, there have been no other work done on site this week, that I'm verifying that with the contractor right now. But like I said, I was told to not bring any other trees down. I was not told not a single other thing could happen on site this week.
So I will say, what I communicated back was, call the tree contractor and make it clear, we are not taking down any trees from this meeting. So I hear where you're coming from in your perspective, Derek. I'm telling you what, I walked away from the meeting and thought that I had complied with what we agreed. It did not occur to me, to be honest with you, that I just wasn't, to be honest with you, thinking about the pathways. So I'll just be clear, I heard you and I thought I followed up with what we agreed.
Not personally, not personally.
No, so I know I hear you, but I'm just saying, if we're gonna use the word trust, I think that I am totally open to hearing you say, we thought it included this, and I'll be honest, I wasn't even thinking about the pathways. I thought we walked away with some clarity about trees, so just keeping it real with you, and I followed up and did what I thought we had agreed to do.
At our meeting,
So wait, hold on, can we do this? I think my concern is we could spend time on process, and if people want to, that's one thing. As of right now, we are supposed to allow our contractor to come in at the end of the week. We asked them to put it off, and we said it has to be done, we have to have a community meeting, and then we can circle back to you. Hold on, so here's my thing. If we want to talk about, use this time to unpack process, that is one conversation. But can we lean into the details on the trees and actually start to try to come to some
At
agreement?
this point, it's not even process is what I'm saying.
Okay,
At this point, it's faith, it's trust, it's transparency. It's being able to
Okay.
wake up.
have I told, have you come to me with anything and I haven't followed through? I
That's
hear where
not
you
the
are.
question.
Yeah,
That's your question. That's not the question. I simply want to make it clear,
Mhm.
and I'll stop,
Mhm.
that at this point, not only is it not about previous conclusions and agreements, it's also not about process at this moment.
Mhm.
Hopefully, we will get to where it's about process, but right now, it's about trust. It's about trust. We have showed up at a meeting that is titled a community briefing.
Mhm.
Briefing. The briefings, including that one on
Mhm.
Saturday, or the process, including that one on Saturday.
Yeah.
And other briefings and processes in the entire span of the project, right, have increasingly led to, not diminished, but led to at this hour, a severe breach and absence of trust. I'm not here because I trust that whatever you intend is true or not true. More importantly, whether or not I can trust it.
okay, so
May I say something,
Yeah.
Mike? See, the issue is not so much about distrusting you,
mhm,
but what we understood from was it arborist or was it horticultural schools there? That the taking away of those paths would negatively affect the trees because of the drain off and, these sort of things. So we had a thorough conversation with them
okay,
regarding that. And so the pathways are an important part about preserving the trees.
all right, so here's what I'll say. From my understanding of the arborist, and then we're gonna really actually delve into this, let's look at it. It's less the pathways, it's the regrading. The regrading, which has not started, that has not happened, is where you start digging underneath, like you start taking soil out. That will cause harm to trees. And we're about to talk about where that was proposed, what can be changed, what can't be changed, if we are going to be ADA compliant. So we need to get into the heart of that issue. I do think there's a space to name this. What I'm saying is, I'll say it, it's my bad. It didn't even occur to me to say, and make sure we don't touch the pathways. I left the meeting, I said, you know what? We had these 2 people coming in. We've got to wait until we had a community meeting. That is what I relayed back to staff. And I'm just being honest. I didn't think about the pathways. So
let's
I
move
hear
on.
what and the regrading has not started. That also was communicated back. But I didn't say, do not take up the pathways, because I just, keeping it real, didn't think about it.
When they looked up the pathways on Saturday, while we were at a community walk and talk meeting with our community that we conducted, we watched them rip those pathways up and expose roots of trees that were not marked for removal. And then it rained, and then it froze and went down to 20 degrees. And now the roots of those trees have been exposed to freezing cold weather where they were protected by the edges of
And
pathways.
I hear you.
This is
I'm
how
saying,
we-
all I can say is keeping it real. I did not think about it at the end of the meeting.
And actually,
I can only apologize.
we're not blaming you.
Right, and I'm just saying, all I want to make it clear is, we made an agreement. I thought I understood what I needed to do. I did what I needed to do. I thought, and I understand what you're saying about that impact. We just didn't ask.
Responsible.
So let us continue.
Okay.
Let us continue.
So let's keep moving, because I do think it's worthwhile to make sure we all are on the same page and we have some space to ask some questions. So being clear, we're not gonna talk about like the playground and whether we're doing it again, or the amphitheater that we, sort of the outdoor classroom. We are really focusing on the tree. So as I've mentioned, that we do have, the contractor wants to move forward on Friday with the decision-making, because we will either have to keep elements in the project or not keep elements in the project. And that will affect who he's already booked to show up and do the different pieces we're gonna do. So some of the things that are supposed to happen, like the entrances, et cetera, we have to make those decisions so that so people can keep doing the work that they're supposed to be doing. So we're gonna lean in on a couple of pieces. So I do wanna say, I know there's a lot of folks here, I'm really glad that folks are here. There was a huge tension in the last meeting about abutters versus folks that live in Roxbury versus folks that do not live in Roxbury. We are going to try, we're gonna hear everyone. We are gonna try as best possible to have a little extra weight to people who have directly abut. I'm not sure exactly how we do that. But I know that that was a huge issue in the last meeting around whose voices were heard. So just, I think if you live immediately around and you're weighing in, please let us know. We are trying to pay attention to that. So Kathy, if you wanna just, and we'll use the mic. Yeah, sorry.
Ryan said she was gonna find out what contract that was. Don't do that. You approach the person and say we're in a contract. City of Boston.
I was pulling up the path.
Yeah. You identify with someone and you ask them to boss what you say. See, the trust is very important.
Hold on. Show us the pictures, because when we do construction projects, to be honest with you, we're not even allowed to use Parks Department staff. That's like, you can't do that.
That's how you identify themselves.
So share the picture, because we're not, like, that's literally not even right in procurement law. We've hired someone, they're supposed to manage the process from beginning to end. And I did not call them and say, do nothing. So that would be my bad. But if the person said that they're Parks Department staff, they can sweep and clean up things, but we don't have staff pull up.
He was concerned about us falling through manhole covers that would have been there. They didn't even do the path.
All right, well, we'll do a little investigation on that, because that doesn't make any sense. I'm not saying that he didn't say it. I'm just saying that ain't how it works.
And it was done on a weekend, after hours, all day Saturday, and until 5 o'clock on Friday. And we were concerned, why are they out here on a Saturday, suddenly one over here ripping up the
A
pavement?
massive caterpillar backhoe going up Honeysuckle Hill and reaching to
We
some.
don't, no.
We don't even own a backhoe. That's what I'm saying, like, we'll do the investigation, but this sounds real, like, I know, because we don't own that kind of equipment.
Okay, so.
That's why we pay someone else.
To your previous point.
Yeah.
I'm gonna put, I live directly.
Yeah, I'm not saying it didn't happen. I'm just saying,
I'm just saying, so
it will
let that
not-
way,
Yeah.
it exists.
yeah,
I'm in a water directly across the street. I was also at the meeting with you.
yeah.
And I was also there with this gentleman and the operators of the heavy equipment were removing pathways very close to very large trees that are in Western, on Honeysuckle Hill and all the way almost to the summit. From Dale Street in I guess it would be a southerly direction diagonally across the hill, almost to the summit.
Okay, we will look into that. Thank you for that. I'm going to really briefly run through some of our capital project cycle. We typically do our capital projects, we do parks and playgrounds, fields, and courts, playgrounds are typically on a 15 to 20-year life cycle. By that point, by that point, the codes have changed and the conditions of them are deteriorating, that they're past their useful life for recreational purposes. Passive recreation areas are typically on a 30 to 50-year cycle. Went back and looked through some of our archives. Last time we did any work on Honeysuckle Hill in the vicinity of Honeysuckle Hill was 1970, so over 50 years ago. And at that point, it was at the base of the hill. It was not over at the top of the hill. So these pathways are longer lived than most of us. And code has changed significantly since then. So that's part of what we're responding to. When we come in and we do a comprehensive plan like at Malcolm X, we try to remove dead material and plant a new succession of the tree canopy so that we can elongate its life. I just want to clear up one point that I think has been going around in the community. There is a Mass General Law, Chapter 87, which protects street trees, publicly owned street trees. It's called and it pertains to trees in the right of way. Currently there is no state or city protection for trees on private land. We are trying to end or publicly owned open space. So that's part of what we're trying to study through the urban forest plan, which Maggie is leading, and really bringing in equity as the base of that. Nella is on the community advisory board, and so that's part of what we're going to be bringing these lessons learned into that community process as well, into that planning process as well. So I'm going to hand it over to Lauren to talk about the project specifically.
Just to clarify Kathy's point, somebody asked me, isn't there a process to have a hearing for every tree? And what Kathy is mentioning is if the tree is on the street, like in the sidewalk, yes. If the tree is in a park or in a person's backyard, currently, no. So the question of whether or not we should, what'd you say? The way that Chapter 87 is written, they're not considered that. So I'm not saying that they're not there. We are in the process of looking at a tree ordinance, but currently, under the current system, those would not be under Chapter 87.
What about the Dale-Street trees that are behind the retaining wall right there by the sidewalk that provide shade to the sidewalk that are all rock with all shade, 25 trees?
As we get through the presentation, each of those trees that those of you are talking about, we will be talking about each of those. We just haven't gotten to that part yet.
Thank you.
Not a problem. Okay, so one of the things we want to talk about, and I know that some of you are recognized from having quite a few community meetings for this project. So just wanted to revisit before we get into the specifics of each of the trees that we're talking about. I wanted to just revisit some of the project priorities and goals that we've talked about. Those of you who've been at the community meetings have seen this slide, not with these colors added to it, but you guys have seen this slide. This has come about from the City of Boston goals and priorities, by the Parks Department, and also by the community, from the things that we've heard about the community. And one of the things that we wanted to talk about with this is to make sure that everybody understands that sometimes these goals and priorities conflict with each other and they overlap with each other. And making those decisions and prioritizing and making those decisions is what we want to talk to you guys about tonight, so that people understand what goes into that decision-making process, because there are a lot of goals and priorities. So one of the things we wanted to make sure that we talked about was some of those goals are increased accessibility. It's what we talked about. And I know that somebody asked in the chat or in the Q&A about ADA compliance. And it's not an ADA guideline that we have to go out and make every single one of our parks ADA compliant today. But what it says is when we do a renovation, that renovation has to be ADA compliant. And they were asking about other parks that weren't ADA compliant, and that's because we haven't done a project there. When we do that project, it needs to be brought up to ADA compliance, which is why we're talking about this now. Because as Kathy said, we do all of these renovations, right? We did the court at one point, we did the playground at one point, but we have not looked at Malcolm X Park as a whole, which means that the ADA compliance has not been looked at from a circulation standpoint, right? Because that was not what was looked at when we first did that renovation. So accessibility is important, and not just accessibility, but also inclusion, right? We want to go above, we want to meet ADA, but we also want it to be an inclusive, welcoming environment. We talked about upgrading the park entrances, because as we know, right now, there was only one entrance that was ADA accessible. And Mike will talk about the upgrades from where we are. There's I believe, a 90-foot grade change, Mike, in the park from high to low, which is pretty steep, right? So we know that. We're already up against challenges with accessibility, but that was one of the things that people said was a priority in the park, is to not only make them accessible, but more unifying and welcoming as well. We wanted to maintain existing tree canopy. And that's why we're here to talk about tonight, because we do love trees. We don't talk about taking them out just for the sake of taking them out. We look at them, we prioritize them, we talk through it, and that's part of what we prioritize. Addressing safety concerns, that also has to do with visibility. It has to do with the health of trees in terms of limbs or trees coming down. So that was a priority in the project. And also protecting the pudding stone outcroppings in the historic walls. We heard about it a lot in terms of people don't want us to touch the pudding stone. They don't want us to touch the historic walls in terms of alignments of pathways. Plus also renovating and bringing up to modern day standards, a lot of the other things in the park, such as the courts, the field, the playgrounds. All of that has to work together. And so that's what we wanted to talk through and just set that up, to just remind everybody that there are a lot of goals here and they don't always work in tandem with each other. Next slide. Also, just so that I know not everybody in this room has been a part of the process the whole time. So just wanted to do a quick reminder of what we have been doing over the past couple of years. We started the community process back in May of 2020. We've done quite a few, I don't even know how many right now, different community meetings for different parts of the project, for the field, for the history component, for the park in general, in terms of all of the design renovations to the different various components. Tonight, we have the tree removal meeting that we're talking about. The park, as you guys know, started construction a couple of weeks ago, and it's approximately 1 year of construction. So that is an update for where we are and a reminder for what the goals were for the project. And then I'm going to hand it over to Mike Easler, who's the project designer for Weston and Sampson.
Right now?
Good evening, everybody. I've met some of you before, and I'm going to try to keep this brief because I think Lauren touched on most of it. And just to re-emphasize that our goal here was to make a beautiful park that kept the experience. Yes, of course, I'm sorry. Our goal of the park and improving the park was to keep the experience and keep the natural feel of Honeysuckle Hill, to save as many trees as possible while improving the active components, including the playground, the courts, the fields. So as you can see here, the current site is extremely inaccessible. There's only one accessible route to the playground off of Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard, and there's one accessible route to one of the softball fields. Everything else on site is not considered accessible by ADA or MAAB standards. That's the Americans with Disability Act and the Massachusetts Architectural Access Board. Typically, that is a 5% slope or less for any walkway, with a 1.5% cross slope. And as you all know, it's a very steep site, so that's a very hard thing to meet on site.
Yeah, so I just want to say, this is something I've heard people sort of say, why don't we just widen the pathways? And I want to also speak a few degrees of slope, if you are dealing with mobility issues, is a major issue. There are places in City Hall that are in theory ADA accessible, and I worry about whether I will fall down them. So I've never thought about it before, but I'm living that right now. And so I don't think people mean to be, insensitive. I think they're trying to figure out a middle way. But I want to keep it real that a couple of degrees change in slope means a lot of people cannot appreciate it. And some of you all know that my Aunt Jean Barnett lived on Mayfair Street and could never be part of what was going on in Malcolm X when she went onto a walker. And my uncle was a ref for softball in there. So I know we're gonna have to talk about trade-offs, but I think there's been a lot of idea that we could make it accessible and not change. And I think I wanna be really clear. Sloping, when you got a mobility challenge, has to be right, or else it's not safe for you to use the space.
To that, we understand, well, first of all, we're for, I'm for.
No, I'm not saying you are, I'm saying, I was just saying, because I got questions and we couldn't just expand.
I'm looking right now at the results of the survey from this process that I and others participated in. And it's from a page or from a image entitled Online Survey Results Key Themes. And the heading of the bar graph says most desired park amenities. And as of that time, there were 654 respondents, which was enough for your department or the Parks Department to publish that and to share it for our review and whether or not it was consistent with what we had participated in. And in that results of that survey, the top 5, your publication puts a square around the top 5 most desired park amenities. Number 5 is trees and shrubs. Number 11 is accessible pathways. So my point is your own data and our own contributions. And from the very beginning, including when I met with Michael on Honeysuckle Hill about the challenges then of first of all, trying to prioritize tree preservation and then scaling, as far as prioritizing. From there, okay, other concerns like what this image is showing about accessibility. It was very clear early on, and in this survey and in the graphic, that this community's 5th most important priority for this park was trees and shrubs.
What was number 1, 2, 3, and 4?
Good question, and I'll tell you. And if I can't find it fast enough, I'm gonna get the staff knows, but it's here. Number 1 was basketball court, which makes sense because it's the most heavily utilized feature of the park in the portion of the park that is the most urban and that is accessible and that it joins a 6 lanes road and a 4 lane road.
And I got you, what?
Okay, basketball court, heavily used. Night lighting. Children's play equipment. All sound good. Trash receptacles. Benches. Trees and shrubs.
You destroyed it.
So here's what I'll say.
We're putting in new benches.
Okay, but
But anyway,
again,
but I'm saying,
your data, your survey, your community.
but I think
process.
my thing is that we're not disagreeing about the importance of trees. We are taking out 54, we are adding 91. So-
97.
97.
97, sorry.
Not mature trees.
Hold on, hear me out. So it's not a question of whether or not we believe in trees or not. That's not the question. What we're trying to talk about is the trade-off between can we achieve multiple aims at the same time?
And what this says is that we want to achieve accessibility,
Right,
but not at the expense of the higher rank that the community has placed on its trees.
and I guess what I'm saying is, if
I-
some of those trees are coming down because some people can't access the park at all the
But
way it
this-
is right now.
But what this is saying, and what Michael is saying, we've morphed.
Yeah.
Okay, from the process,
Mhm,
from the prioritization,
mhm,
from the very nice long calendar of engagement
mhm,
points,
right,
watershed marks. We've morphed with no discussion until 3 weeks into construction
Yeah.
phase about why accessibility in somebody's view, maybe the cities, maybe the planning firm, we have morphed into being didactically explained why ADA, which is not required.
yes, hold on, ADA is required if we upgrade the park in any way.
And you know as well as I do, that
Yeah.
on a parcel that size,
Yeah.
upgrading the park, there are portions of the project,
Mhm.
portions of the park, which frankly, the summit of Honeysuckle Hill was never intended to be wheelchair accessible. The reason it's there is because it is an elevated, steep, high, with vistas, urban,
Right.
wild.
And the truth is
And
that
no
the
one- no
the
one- no one-
pinnacle will not be accessible.
And no one said, in
Mhm.
any meeting that I'm aware of or
Mhm.
documents that I've read, that the park and its needs for accessibility included regrading Honeysuckle Hill and all of those trees that the community prioritized, so that each and every one of these exits and paths in this urban wild would be, and entrances in particular.
So
would be
all of the
wheelchair
paths, let's look at what they're gonna look like, because they actually still won't be all accessible. We're just looking at, can we make one accessible path? So We'll show you what the thing is.
And there is one, and frankly,
No, there
it's
wasn't.
across the street, it's at the school. It's right there.
Go
Go
It's the
back.
southernmost.
Where is accessible? As of right now, if you are in a wheelchair or have mobility challenges, you can go to
I'll
the
show
field.
you where, I'm gonna answer your rhetorical question.
Where?
See where the school is?
Right here?
Right there, okay, right there, the grading up, down, right, down, right, up, right there, right there. We can go there now. The grading from there, straight across, and then down.
No,
is abs- In fact,
In fact, it isn't. I'm
I
sorry.
have a neighbor who is, and a 24-year-old, who's, was born with severe physical disabilities, who goes on that hill with
That
his
doesn't
mother
make it easier.
weekly, okay, with and without his special wheelchair. And another thing that we could do to be ADA
So what you're
compliant,
saying is,
we can
that-
actually, if people can get into the park, and then the park itself, say, provided, wheelchair things that are part of the park accessibility, we can solve this problem. But no, we're talking about contractors and contracts that have already been signed, and ADA broadly, just splattered across the park, including where it's not needed as severely as in other places. And
So
that's
where
that's
do
a
you-
dumbed down conversation.
You know what we could do? We could just level that whole thing so it's like.
that is, okay, we're not even having that conversation. So here's the reality. Anything on here that we upgrade, if we upgrade it, we gotta make it accessible.
Of course.
That's the rule. So the only thing that we're talking about is Honeysuckle Hill. So go back,
And leave
Go
it
to the
alone.
next slide.
Just leave it alone.
right now, to get to the amphitheater, it also
There
has.
is no end.
We agreed to this amphitheater outdoor classroom.
Did we agree to putting it there?
Yes.
It is there to be
Did
close.
we agree to putting it there?
Through the community process.
Did
we-
multiple
that's-
discussions,
that's-
that was where-
Please share that information.
So you're saying you've never seen it put there? I've seen
Did
it.
we agree to putting it there?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, here's what I said. We presented it there because that amenity was most requested from the school. So we put it closest to the school. Because we found like the people most likely to use an outdoor classroom was the school. So the question is, are you suggesting we put it somewhere
It's
else?
just like the tree map. Okay, yeah, there's a map.
And I think the other layer to that is the pudding stone
With all due respect,
also has some.
there
creates some
is
constraints.
a map
Yep.
that shows the trees,
Mhm.
and their good health, questionable health, and health.
Mhm.
And that map, like so many others throughout this process, including in areas that we're not allowed to discuss, is the map itself is what gave me or others who looked at it,
Mhm.
the first indication of what there is to be talked about,
Mhm.
okay? And that map is dated December of 2021, 3 months before the construction date is supposed to start. And all it does is it just shows, and we only got this when requested in March, because there were red or orange signs. So listen, the trust process bunk, okay, there has been no agreement about half.
Wait. Sorry, Melo, what did you ask?
What are all those blue lines?
So let us explain.
So blue is where it is now accessible. And red is where we are leaving it inaccessible. We can't make every pathway accessible.
Not now, proposed, not now.
Need.
You said now.
Yeah. Right, but I'm saying blue is where we are making the path accessible and red is where we've already accepted. It's not possible to make everything accessible, but we are trying to make it so that no matter what, if you enter from any side of the park, there is an accessible entrance. One decision that already got made is, as you can see right here, it would be ideal if you enter over here on the corner of Dale and Paulding to be able to cross. But what we decided is that grade is too steep and we don't have enough space to make that happen. So if you enter from that side, you either have to try to move up this hill, which is also relatively steep on the sidewalk, or go around. It's less than ideal, but we made a trade-off that trying to fix that one little sort of piece of red to try to make that accessible was just not
The path
possible.
they ripped up, that big one in the middle.
What is,
The path that we just told you about, they ripped up is this. You're telling me they said they're not gonna do this. This is what they ripped up on Saturday morning.
so the whole, but I'm saying, the plan right now is all of the paths would be redone together, so you wouldn't clean up one path and then leave another
Yeah,
path
and
looking.
that's when ADA kicks in. It's just like a homeowner.
Yeah.
And construction. If you open up a wall, you have to bring it up to code.
Correct.
That's everywhere in the United
Mhm.
States. But if you don't open the wall, you don't have that problem. And we.
And so what
never
I'm
talk-
saying, what I'm asking
I'm
from you
saying-
is.
What I'm saying is that we never discussed
Mhm.
opening up those walls.
I agree, but my question is this: are you saying that you ultimately think we should not make the hill ADA accessible?
You asked us that 2 Saturdays ago, and what did people who were there say? She said, are we?
So I know, people said different things.
I-
Diane, Senator Wilkerson said, we all agree with ADA accessibility, but
For
then I heard
the
other.
park, and
right.
she also said that the park has
And
segments, and that Honeysuckle Hill
Yes,
has far less of a priority for that.
And
issue.
what I'm saying is-
And let's talk about it, and we said, okay, we will, and instead, it starts happening. the
okay,
work is done.
I've already apologized for the work that was done, that I was never
Your
told was gonna happen.
apology is not what's solicited here.
Right, but I'm saying, I think I can't do anything else about what is the path.
We
But I'm saying, moving to the
understand.
next
It's not-
question. No, I'm saying, here's the question. At the heart of this is a tension between leaving the hill untouched and making it accessible. We cannot make it accessible and leave it untouched. That's just the reality.
And also,
It
you
wasn't
cannot,
made to be accessible.
and you cannot leave it touched.
So what I'm hearing people say is, it wasn't intended to be accessible. And I'm just saying, at the time that Frederick Law Olmsted designed this park, there was no ADA. There was no, and where I feel a tension, I'm just gonna keep it real, is I hear you. I also feel like I'm supposed to pay attention to the people whose voices are maybe not being heard because they can't access the park. And the question is, what is the trade-off? Like, I wanna hear where people are coming from, and I wanna hear the community, and I wanna make sure that people who might have mobility challenges can access Honeysuckle Hill.
And maybe they're-
Yes.
Can you speak up, please?
Come up to the front.
Yes.
I wonder if this is,
Okay,
Excuse
use
me.
that mic, girl.
Can you just speak up a little louder for the Zoom? Thank you.
I think this is setting up a bit of a false argument between ADA accessibility, which I think we can all agree on is really important, and taking down mature trees in the park. I feel like the real issue here is that the grading is easier to achieve if all the older trees go. Whereas residents, neighbors want to see those mature trees stay. So before we try to decide between ADA and the trees that are there, can we look again at another solution for grading?
And
So,
can I
I think it's worth noting, and we should look at it, because I think we're about to share some statistics about how many of the trees are mature trees, because they're not all mature trees. And there was an intent to try to remove as few mature trees as possible. Like, there was a look at what is the pathway to the grade that goes to the least number of older
And
trees.
I
again,
think
by
if we can look at the, if we can look at the next few images, that will help.
Okay, so can
If we can just
do
get
that?
through the
Hold on.
slides and then
If
we
we
can
can-
do this.
Can we show the images so you can at least see what we looked at? And then we can come back and discuss it, because I do think this actual question was asked, and it just makes sense to show people what was looked at. Does that,
Can you just show us the work? So in blue right now is the work that's being done and what has to be done because there's work being done, right?
no, so the
No,
blue,
let me rephrase. it.
Okay.
The map is showing, these are the spots that we decided we're gonna touch in terms of updating this part. That's one part.
And who is
And hold on. And then the second part is because we're touching these spots, we now have to touch these other spots because of ADA compliance requirements. What I'm asking is, can we just first start with the parts that we're gonna touch? And then from there, talk about those separate pieces and what are the ADA requirements that are now gonna result? And then talk about.
Yeah, that's actually on the next slide. So that's why I think you should go to it so you can
So
see.
the next slide is just what's being touched without ADA compliance.
It will, this shows you what the big picture for compliance was.
I know, but I.
And the next part will go into, you'll be able to see pockets of trees and we can talk through which trees are which.
What I'm trying to get at is, the
What?
conversation that has to be had is the conversation between the part as is and this image. And we haven't had that conversation, which is, here's the work we decided. For instance, we're updating a top, that's work that's happening.
Yep.
We're updating these fields, that's work that's happening.
Mhm,
We're updating these courts, that's work that's happening.
mhm.
Now, because we're doing this work, each of these three components, the field, the courts, and the top line, now have to become ADA accessible.
Mhm.
So let's talk about together.
Yep.
How you do that, and that's the conversation that I haven't seen, that's the slide I haven't seen.
All
So
right,
now when I'm looking at this, I'm looking at the court, and I'm going, okay, that court has to be ADA accessible.
yeah.
What does that actually mean? Can it be accessible
I-
just from Martin Luther King Boulevard? Can it be, what's the legal minimum requirement for accessibility for that basketball?
Okay, so I want to say this really quickly, which is there's ADA compliance, and then there's also what we call inclusion, which is, did we set it up so that a person can get there? Or did we set it up so a person who is mobility challenged can participate in the park? And I think that is a different standard. And from our perspective,
That's like the next slide.
that is a high, no, what I'm saying is, this shows you our big picture. Hold on, we're gonna get to the next slide, which looks at the specific trees. What I'm saying is, from a big picture, we did not go for the low bar of, can a person get to the basketball court? We also looked at, could a person get from the basketball court to the top lot? Does that make sense?
So it makes sense.
If we know who
I
this is,
disagree.
who is we?
I-
Who is we? I would make perfect sense.
I'm saying, the Parks Department, Design and Construction, in conversation with Weston and Sampson, who are the designers.
But not
Yes.
you.
That's what makes sense. So what you're explaining makes sense.
Yeah.
But that's not what I'm asking.
Okay, so I'm trying to understand, what are you asking?
So I'm offering an approach
Mhm.
to have the more difficult conversation, which is, how do we achieve all these goals? And what I'm saying is, I suggest that we start with the work that necessitated accessibility first.
Okay,
That work, as I'm looking, can be broken into three distinct projects.
mhm,
The field to the top left.
Yep.
The basketball courts to the bottom.
Yep.
And then the top. The work on those three.
and then the one other thing is the entrances.
The work on those three
Entrances.
require the blue paths.
Yes,
Okay, so what I'm saying is, can we approach this piece by piece first? What you're saying is the
Mhm.
low bar.
Mhm.
Piece by piece first. You tell us what the legal requirements for ADA accessibility to that field, that basketball court, and that top lot is.
Mhm.
And then after we talk about that,
Yeah.
then let's talk about how do we make the park now inclusionary and what then does that mean? So
okay,
I'm just offering that because
Okay.
right now, I just keep hearing, this is what ADA accessible means for the park, and I haven't been part of those.
right. So the next slide actually will look at some of the components and we'll get to lean in. Actually, I'm not sure if it's the next one, but we've got like 6 to 10 more slides. So I think it makes sense. It at least will give us the same information to be working from, even if we don't come to the same conclusion about how to move forward. So I think, can we go to the next slide?
Well, I was just gonna say that, really quickly, when we do our community meetings, the community input is very important to us. But it is not the only consideration that we are looking at. There are City of Boston goals that we're trying to meet. There are Parks Department goals we're trying to meet. There are also federal accessibility and play standards that we are trying to meet. So we're trying to balance all of these different opportunities in the final site design. So that's why the community input is incredibly important to us. We want to build a park that the community will use and enjoy and appreciate. But there are sometimes things that we feel as professionals is the correct move forward in order to fulfill the community's goals beyond what the community has, beyond what we hear in a room. So,
I kind of want to say
Okay,
something.
so wait, hold on. Can we really go to this? Because I think it was a good suggestion. I do want us to go there. Can we just get through it? We'll have plenty of time to keep talking, but I think it will help to have the same information that we're working from. So this is where we are currently.
And I understand, and just to really quickly comment on the grading comment question, we did everything we could with trying to balance the goals of this universal inclusivity and accessibility and saving as many trees as possible through every trick in the book for grading this properly. And we'll discuss a few more. But existing canopy conditions. So this is straight out of Google Earth. This is a good image in the fall of 2019. This is the canopy coverage as it currently exists. Next slide, please. With the current tree removal, this is the canopy that would be removed. So looking at the actual tree coverage, these are the trees being removed in the plans. And that is what it looks like.
And that's a problem. It's a problem.
The ones with the X, we're gonna, hold on, let's go through because I'm gonna try to do what Jose asked for, which is we'll look at where things are specifically. So.
It's the area of green, not the X's. The X's are the tree trunk locations. And those are the trees that are located for demolition.
All right.
I just wanna, because that's not a lot of stuff on Honeysuckle Hill real quick.
So we'll talk through where things are. Okay, so here's the first one. I'll start right up here. You see the amphitheater, right? That is one tree being removed, and it's just to create an accessible path to the amphitheater. Where the amphitheater sits was put mostly to be close to the school, but also because it's a clear open land right now, and not as much would have to be removed. As you can see, it's in a sort of open space that exists already.
There's a gate opening that would connect onto the
Yeah.
tree.
So there is one tree. Because of the way it's set up at the canopy, there's no way to have a path. Because the trees are all in that line without taking one tree out. So there was a look at and this is where tree health came into account. If you look at all, say like there's 3 trees in, it's like, how do we cut a path with the one that's the least healthy and leave the healthier ones up? So that's an example of one tree. Then we look at this side, and that's a place we can have a conversation. These trees right here on this edge, hold on, right there.
This one?
These 3 trees are currently right up against the fence. The agreement was originally we were going to replace the whole fence because it's a little on the sadder side. And usually whenever we do a park upgrade, we do put in a new fence that will last for a long time. That is an example of a place where we could decide not to put in a new fence. If you put in a new fence, if you pull up the fence, you will undoubtedly disturb the roots of the tree. And if you try to put in a new fence, you'll undoubtedly go into the roots of the tree. So it doesn't make sense to take it out unless you're willing to let go of those trees. So that's an example of a place we could leave the fence there. Maybe we could paint it and like just give it a different kind of spruce up.
I'm sorry, but actually I've studied what has recently come out as far as the reason for each of the trees that are marked for removal. And the 3 that you refer to as being right up against the fence are actually not right up against the fence.
You don't think their roots are?
And more importantly, than what's already been written in your whoever's assessment of why those 3 trees should be removed is to improve sight lines. First of all, so you know that's not health, that's not ADA compliance, but now this other arbitrary category of rationale for removing the tree that none of us have
So
participated.
but I
Hold on,
think,
it's my
Derek, we
final-
have an opportunity to decide to leave them. The key thing is,
Finally,
we should not pull the gate up and replace it because it will
Great.
probably kill the trees
great,
to take it out and to put it in.
great. But finally, those 3 trees are also located not so much up against the fence,
Mhm.
but up against the sidewalk and right of way that you say is governed by a city ordinance about removing.
So I don't understand how they could be up against the sidewalk, but not up against the fence when the
Not
fence.
up against either. They're at the sidewalk. Okay, the canopy of each of those
Okay.
trees goes over
Public
the
day.
public sidewalk in Paulding Street.
Mhm,
I understand correctly,
mhm.
that right there puts those 3 trees as well
And
as
it's,
other,
and it's,
as well as others throughout the park in a different category. So this,
okay, well, we can talk about it. We should get someone from legal. Our understanding is that chapter 87, if we plant it, if we dig up in the sidewalk and put in a tree pit, that's the conversation that triggers that. That's my understanding. I'm willing to go back. If you have a lawyer that's telling you something different, I'm totally open.
my literacy of, in reading what your department has given us upon request to read, which is why are each of these trees being removed? It's
Right, no,
not
no, I'm
law,
saying,
it's
you're talking
not
about the
law.
Article 87, I'm saying, my point is, if we leave the fence as is, we would not disturb the roots of those trees, they could remain. So that's,
Well, your
right
arborist in your report about why they were being removed.
I hear you,
did not-
Derek.
Did not say that.
Derek, I hear you,
It
but I'm just
said
keeping it real.
sidewalk.
Wait, I hear you, and I'm not disagreeing with you.
What you keep
I'm
reading
saying
and
we
what's
haven't-
really on paper are 2 different things. What
Okay,
they-
I hear you, and I'm not gonna argue, I didn't write that. What I do know is, these are up against a fence. If we choose to leave the fence in, which we could do, we will not disturb their roots, they could continue to remain. That's just one, that's an option. All right? So I'm gonna come back there, I'm gonna go around, those are the most complex. We'll come back to those in a second.
Chief, I just had at least one on the right there, on the near the fence.
Yep.
One of those is a buckeye tree.
Yes, I heard that.
You don't find those often.
Right, so I think the reality is, if we can make an agreement around the fence, we could leave.
Can I just,
So hold
can I
on,
just say one thing really quickly?
Let's just
I
keep
just-
it fixed.
I just want to address what Derek was just saying. What we sent out was a request by the community to why we were proposing to remove those trees, right? So we did that. Because of the community concern, we have gone back and revisited. That is why those trees along that fence line were not part of what we sent out because we were asked to revisit, and that's what we're doing, and that's why we're here. So I think that if we
And
could
they're
get
beautifully
through,
marked with orange spray paint.
I understand that.
Yes, they were originally meant
I
to go.
understand that. And if we
You're
could-
saying that they can, if we agree collectively to not move the fence, we can leave them there. That's an option.
If we could get to the next couple
Mhm.
slides, we've identified, Derek, not just those 3, but a few other areas and what it would take to save those. And that's what we wanted to present to you guys tonight,
So-
but we need to be able to get to those slides to show that. So
Yeah.
if we could do that, that would be really helpful for you guys to know that's coming.
Which way are we working on? Are we working?
I started there, I was going around.
We're going down or
Yeah.
up
I mean, it's,
to the Dale Street? Dale Street,
yeah,
now,
so
okay,
I was coming down this way.
okay. I just can't see.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
Push over. Yep. Very long street. And it's now leaning on 2 other healthy trees that are just holding it up.
So you're saying this happened before?
Yes, it's still there. I asked
There's no
this person before we were sitting
I have put it
on, I said, listen, in the meantime, please just remove that tree
Mhm.
from leaning on these other 2 healthy ones.
So that it will not
So
affect their
no
health.
further damage.
Yeah.
And so.
I
just-
will, the
it's
one in the
all
playground?
sensitive.
Yeah.
I will have that done tomorrow.
Okay, so we can have that. So here. Let's see, I'm trying to. Lauren,
Which one?
Yeah,
these 3 are the playground related, correct?
Yes.
yes.
All right, so I think people know we are upgrading the playground. There are 2 layers of things going on the playground. One is accessibility, which we have to do. We can go back to the side so you can see it. The second layer is people wanted a splash pad. We're putting in the splash pad. Doing the work to put in the splash pad does necessitate putting in water. And that is one of the issues related to this. So it is both accessibility and integrating water for the splash pad. Right, but if you flow it to the splash pad, you actually have to put in other sets of equipment to make that work. So that's part of why that's digging up. Both to make the path accessible and to install the equipment for the splash pad.
What trees are concerned there, chief, is just.
Yeah.
Are we needing any shade for the children who are expecting?
So, yeah, so I know that they will not be as mature, but we are taking out 54 trees, we are adding 97 trees.
Can we save those?
Are they 50 feet tall?
No,
Can we,
they are not.
that's a question, can we save those and replant and just move them? So we don't destroy.
So here's the big challenge on replanting. When a tree is that old, if you try to move it to another location, if its roots are like seriously, you often end up in that process cutting some of the roots. You don't pull, it's almost impossible with a big tree to get all of those roots really out of the ground. You try to relocate it, its chance of health is.
Those other removals will affect the surrounding trees too. Those other removals
Hmm?
will affect those other trees around it.
What'd you say? Yeah. Yeah. So the truth of it is, we don't control DCR, and people asked us to do this for the little kids. So I'm not saying I don't hear you. At most parks, we are adding, and so this is where there's also like a thing that where I want to get people's agreement, because at most parks, we are adding water features. I also don't want people to feel like, why are you putting water features at other parks, but you're not putting them in our parks? If people have asked me, if they've asked for them, especially if they're in places that are exceptionally hot, we do put them in. So
I have a question.
Yeah.
Are you removing the trees because they're sick? Are you removing the trees because they're ADA non-compliant? What is the reason for getting rid of 53 trees in some park?
Okay.
So wait a minute. So I just want to know.
Yeah.
Is it one or the other or some of both? And why is that so?
There's multiple reasons, and most of the trees have at least 2 reasons that they're in the. There are 2 trees that are healthy, that are in good shape, and are being impacted by this. That is one. Where's the pine tree?
All of
I'm
those
trying to
trees
remember.
on Dale Street, the healthy trees, flowering, cherry trees,
The cherry trees
those are
especially.
live trees, there's absolutely nothing wrong.
So I was going to say, there are 2 mature, healthy trees that are coming down. There are 2 mature, healthy trees, and when we say mature, healthy, we usually mean 24 inches caliber or greater, right? So those are trees that will take a long time to come back. That's real.
What are they? What are they?
You mean, what are there's,
Maple?
I don't know. I'm keeping it real. I do not know. Like, I'm not the kind of person who I can sit at and look at and be like, that is a maple.
Can I say
Yes.
something? The trees that are there, how many are conifers? Oh, how many are evergreen? How many are gonna give us green to see in the winter?
So I do know one tree that's coming down is an evergreen.
Okay, is that how many conifers are there?
There's not a lot of evergreens in the park overall. Do we know how many evergreens we have in the park overall? Okay.
Not to go there. But the point I'm trying to make is that.
Do you know how many? I mean, I think I'm keeping it real. There's 300. Hold on, real time. There's 307 trees in the park. I've used this park my whole life, but I didn't count them all, and I can't. I'm just keeping it real with you. I can't tell you something that I don't know.
It would help if you would see.
We do. What I'm saying, we do have a tree inventory. I didn't bring it with me. A, and 2, I can't pull it up by memory. If you pointed a park tree, I can't say I know.
What's important is that because of the colors,
Mhm.
the season, the
Mhm.
textures, that has a very strong effect on people. If you
putting in 90-something trees,
Mhm.
you have to have a vision of what you want.
Yeah, so
So-
we can tell you what actually those trees are. There's 11 different species. of
And they
trees
all
coming.
have, besides being a different species, they all have an impact.
Mhm.
So when you talk about taking them out, as I mentioned, how many are evergreen? How many are broadleaf?
So-
How many have fall color? How many have exfoliating bark? I want to see, I want to experience all the beauty you see in every other park. There you go.
So what I'm saying is, I'm sure that you could look at the list of what we're putting in. We have, I can say this, we have paid attention about how to replace some of the trees. We are also paying attention to, for instance, we're not putting in any more ashes right now because ashes are not in good shape right now, as you probably know.
Everything is connected.
Mhm,
So you can make everything count towards your goal.
mhm.
The problem is the goal is blurred.
Yes.
The goal is not blurred. You want people to be healthy, happy and everything.
Mhm.
But the project is not going in that direction and you're not using your resources to create it. You have other reasons for doing things other than that reason.
So here's,
Okay.
but you asked, I mean, I think we've admitted that from the beginning. We've heard from the beginning that there's safety concerns. People have asked us to get the police involved. I don't speak for the police. I can't do anything for what they do or don't do. In some instances, as an example, on the Dale Street side, we heard a lot of issues around the use of the field. People sense that it made them feel not safe about what was going on in the park. So a lot of those trees on the end, most of which are volunteers, like trees that weren't actually planted, but sprung up, which is, they're good. They are under 12 inches. And right now, because they're so bushy, they do hide the view. So we have proposed taking out those and planting, can you see that right here on that side, taking out those and planting other shade trees that will grow higher. So they will continue to add shade, but they will continue also to allow people who live at St. Joe's to be able to see in to the field, because issues about what happened on the field, as many of you were here, know were a big drama. So I hear you about the sight lines, but some of them were like attempting to try to hear what we heard about safety concerns and see how we make those decisions. Because those trees over here are actually relatively young trees, what we replace it with actually won't be far off from being able to grow at those distances. So we did look at, there's 19 trees over the 24-inch caliber coming down. That's the bigger trees. Many of them are smaller trees, and where those came out, we felt like if we put in new trees, we actually will not end up too far behind
Can you say what
on the
those
height.
trees are?
The 19.
Yes.
I do not, I'm telling you, I've already admitted, I do not know them by heart, which is which. Yeah, yes. Yeah. Yes. So, but they own, so here's my thing, at the end of the day, I'm not saying what they did at the golf course, that's a whole larger conversation,
Mariana,
but they did.
Clara can speak to that.
It's great big these trees.
So hold on, I just. So hold on, the only part, I don't wanna not let you defend yourself, but I also don't wanna like go into a conversation about Salem when we're trying to figure out what we're doing in Roxbury. So I don't disagree, and like, we can talk about it. I think what I'm saying is, we looked at each of these decisions and tried to match them up. So Weston and Sampson did give us like a proposal, but and I've now spent more time looking at this tree route than ever before, right?
Really important, that's an accurate statement.
What's,
Why wouldn't you talk about that issue? Because it seems to be that the issue is not what's best for the community.
so here's what my challenge is.
That's
Hold on, here's why, because I don't know about Salem, and I don't want to go into a conversation.
She does.
I wanna hear what you said.
Okay, here's my question, y'all. I want to try to actually get some consensus on which trees we can save before folks show up on Friday.
That's not gonna happen. That's not, no, why? Because because there's no week. What I suggest,
Yeah,
is that can we actually create a week that goes through this tree with this arborist in the community, excuse me, horticulturist, but the arborist we bought, which the arborist you're trying to hire because you don't have one. And maybe
we actually do, we have 2 arborists, but they work on street trees, so. just to make it known.
Okay, and this is.
No, so,
She,
all right, so here's the deal, it's 7:26.
And it's March 28th.
And hold on, it's 7:26. I do think there's some things we can find some consensus on, and I just want to also like do some of that and clarify where there can be consensus and where there is
I
not.
would like to hear her answer. You would, 1 minute.
So would I, but I'd also like to know, what are you hoping we can sense tonight?
So I think that there are some places where you made really good points, and I think we can, as long as we make some agreements, like, for instance, I think it's an easy agreement. Just leave the fence up.
I'll take that.
So I think that that's an easy place where we can make some agreement. The thing I want to make sure is I don't get a call in a month, 2 months. Why did you leave this janky field fence up in Roxbury? You wouldn't do that in South Boston. So I want to make sure that if we've agreed, and I think we can look at sprucing it up. I want to make sure we agree that it's okay to leave that, give it some sort of cosmetic look, but recognize that we're not going to move it because moving it could create disruption and would affect the health of the trees.
Okay, so that's just 3 trees.
So that's one area.
It's 3 fleas on a bigger dog, and the dog needs different.
Okay, so I think there's another conversation over here.
I think there's a conversation about the whole thing.
I
And that's what it seems, it appears that that's what we're trying to avoid in the interest of contractors.
No, I think I was looking at big picture slides and Jose said, could we dig in? I was just asked 20 minutes ago, can you go into the specifics of the pieces? And then I just complied. And now you're saying I don't want to have a conversation about the big picture. I'm trying. We were looking at that. Let's look at. No, he did ask. He said, show what the different pieces are.
I said, can we start at either the field, the court, or the top line? And then you tell us what is the minimum requirement for accessibility for each one of those. And then from there, once we know what that is, then ask ourselves, what would a more inclusionary project look like that rather than the minimum accessibility was accessibility plus.
Okay, and what I'm trying to, I thought I was trying to go around the edges of some of the pieces. Like I looked at the field and I'm saying the ones at the field are not coming down even for ADA reasons. They're coming down for what we heard about safety reasons. We could leave those up. We'll still plant the trees that are gonna go on the, right here.
That's not what they asked.
I just want to say,
Well, that's
our
what
arborist,
it just.
who's a phenomenal arborist,
Mhm.
Chris Cutler out of Chestnut Hill, is phenomenal.
Mhm.
He said, he agreed that these need marked. But he didn't agree, as a matter of fact, the ones that are dead were not marked to be taken down. On that side, he
Mhm.
said some of these should be taken down because that would allow them to grow taller,
Mhm.
which is eventually what you want. And so I don't want to remove those completely from the table being touched, but they should be touched. by an
Okay, so
arborist.
you're saying you feel that on this side, and I'm just trying to get clarity of this consensus,
Throughout,
there should be,
throughout the park. What you're saying is true, throughout.
they should be thin, wait,
Some trees in
Yeah.
the park, many
Mhm.
should be thinned. Many have dead limbs.
Mhm.
That most have very healthy canopies. You can see now the budding, where there is budding and where there's not budding in any tree in that park. What it is nobody's taking the time. Even in marking the trees, nobody took the time to do it right. So it's
Yeah.
about taking the time. We're sorry that it's March 2022
Mhm.
and not March 2021. But it's not our fault that this level of needed community engagement has not happened, and it's not gonna be brought to closure this week. In any area of the park.
Okay, so
I want to
So everybody knows what's going on, because from what I've been hearing for the last 40 minutes, you don't even know what's going on. And it's
Yes,
unfair
we do.
to rush. It's like you're having a bargain sale that the trees have to be cut down by but the contractor does not live in this community. The voice of this community should be heard.
That's right.
okay, so here's where we need to figure this out. If we don't have the contractor come on Friday.
Good.
She said it.
Thank you.
I said if. I said if. In all reality, we would have to stop probably all construction.
Absolutely.
I need to name what the ramifications of that are. The contractor will not just stay around and wait for us to have those meetings.
Park will also not be reopened because it
Hold
is.
on. Olmsted would also not have had any black people working for him. He was a great guy, but he did not hire black people.
Y'all need to consider the government.
Yeah.
First of all, y'all need to consider the government. We are the government. Y'all don't have our consent, y'all can't do nothing.
So we're at the actual top of the food chain.
I would like to.
I've been a lot of
have
times.
a list of the trees that you want to take down around the top, like,
Mhm.
what they will see, what they will not see.
Mhm.
Will they see color in the fall? Will they see blossoms in the spring? I want to see what the children will see
Okay,
in the top line. So
and what
I
I'm
need
saying to you
know
is,
things.
I can tell you what the 11 different species are that we're planting,
At the
but I
top line.
cannot tell you
Mike.
exactly where each thing is. So we
Mike
can
could-
come back and look at, because we looked at flowering trees, we looked at, like, we did specifically look at. No, what I'm saying is, in the 97 trees we're planting, there's 11 different species.
Well, we're just talking
And we
about that.
mixed the species with three pieces. One, the foliage. Two, the sort of longevity of the tree. And three, we've actually specifically looked at climate change and which trees are doing better these days with heat emergencies than not.
Look, if we did nothing with these trees that we have now,
Mhm.
be good. It seems to me.
Some yes and some no.
I just want to finish the question,
Mhm.
please. Okay? Would, if we left them alone,
Mhm.
would we be at peace with the trees we have now with proper maintenance?
No.
Because you see, it isn't about cutting down our lives, it's about maintaining our health and wealth with trees.
So here's what I'm saying.
Contractors, we don't want other people telling us, well, we've gotta do it because they gotta get paid and leave us with nothing. We say, leave our trees alone, maintain them, and help us keep a nice, healthy environment where we love and cherish.
Okay, here are the implications of that. As an example, if I leave this tree, we cannot build the amphitheater.
Well, you do not want it.
You don't want it.
Okay, so you're saying we should, you're saying people don't want that amphitheater.
We do not want it. I tried.
We need to come back with information and official give.
I'm saying,
Chief, that was decided in all the community meetings.
yeah, so I think the other challenge is, I'm so glad that people are weighing in. There were also 600 people that engaged in this community process. Many of them who live in the neighborhood, a good chunk of them are not here today. That I'm also worried that the moment we pull that, I get calls from another group of people who say, I came to that meeting, I looked at that stuff, I advocated for it, you told me we were gonna get it, and now it's gone. So I do think that that's, I mean, just keeping it real, that is a tension.
There's a young man right
Oh,
here.
yeah,
who
do a
says
survey.
that he did, so it's not a, see.
No, I hear you. Not everybody was
No,
there.
I'm saying he wants the amphitheater. I think the amphitheater is a good idea, but we're talking about the bigger picture of what is going to be chosen to be taken out and what is going to be morphed into a different. I say if we level the whole hill, everybody would be able.
No, we're not gonna level the
No,
hill.
Wait a minute, let's allow the man to speak respectfully, let's allow the man to speak without interruption.
No, so what I'm saying is that we just need to look at it in a very wholesome manner, including if it has to stop, it has to stop. But we need to come to a consensus so the community is in love with the process.
Right.
And in love with the outcome.
We want to be, but we want you to do the best you can.
So I guess what I'm trying to understand is, what does that
And
look
you have,
like?
and you have considerations
Yeah.
regarding economy and everything else, so I don't envy your position. But I think that we need to slow down a little bit, and take a greater, broader sense, so the community is able to weigh in, people who are sincere, who live here. I live in St. Joseph's, and many of us live around the park, and use the park on a regular basis, so please, don't think that we're just attacking you. We're trying to address the issue.
Right, and I guess what I'm challenged is I'm trying to figure out what that process would look like. Because here's the real, I understand what folks are saying, that when people made the choices, they did not realize the implications on the trees. That is true. We didn't, hold on, we talked about these elements as elements. We didn't talk about what it took to put them in, or what the impact would be on the trees. That is absolutely true. Where I'm also challenged is, given that, we also awarded a contract, and in those contracts, and it's just real, there are penalties that we pay every time we delay something. So just to get to today, I've spent $32,000 that I do not have in the budget. I'm gonna find it, I'm gonna figure it out. But when we call, hold on, again. When we call those tree contractors off, if you put a bid in and somebody takes it and you agree to a date, if you say, no, don't come, you still gotta pay them for the day because they already lined up the people. So I guess what I'm challenged is, I'm trying to understand what the process looks like and what it really is and what time it takes. Because every extra day that we add, if we tell people you cannot come to work in the park this day, we still have to pay them. And I understand where people are. I'm here at this moment trying to figure out a way forward. Because if I basically spend $100,000 on delays, I gotta find that somewhere.
You will. This is a big enough part.
It might be, listen,
This is a big enough.
for this community to be set. It might be good.
Can we just have one person at a time, speak, please?
No, at least respect, it's one thing to cut me off, it's another thing for like 5 different people to cut each other off, I can't even hear you. So
One at a time, please.
where, can we start? You were speaking, I saw a hand, and then we'll go to the next.
It might be good for us to lose a little money and gain a lot of honor and respect in what we're doing.
And right relations.
And right relations. I've said, listen, you've done the best you could to this point. But evidently, there's some things that are missing that you didn't know and we didn't know about because maybe we agreed upon something that the outcome looks beautiful. We didn't know the impact it was going to have. So maybe we need to have a further conversation and we need to look for some money somewhere to account for the time that we need to come to an agreement.
In the project itself, there will be savings. If we begin a good community process, which I got some ideas about what that would look like. I think we both have some ideas, which is more important of what it doesn't look like.
Yeah.
Is what we've been through to date, right? It doesn't look like that. But if there is a process, a manageable, a time-sensitive minded process and engagement of the city, the contractor, and some of the folks in this room.
And information.
And experts.
Information.
There are, in fact, I am sure, savings going forward to the completion of this project that will mitigate any lost daily payment to the contractor who thought he's gonna cut trees down 10 days ago.
I can suggest one. I don't know whether or not somebody from the community who knew which trees were supposed to be blocked over to whoever was doing the marketing. Because I was up in this district, and the markings were all over the place, including an evergreen tree that was part of a row, and they still marked it.
Yeah.
So I think
Yeah,
that's where
marking
they're,
rate.
they're cutting down too many trees.
I'm available.
So I know that, Jose, you actually told me that you walked and you counted how many trees were marked. Was that you or was it someone else?
I counted, so I received the map.
No, but I'm saying, what did you cross-reference in the actual park? How many trees are?
So from the map that I received on the 16th, one part, the marking of the 17th, and found that there were at least 10 trees that were marked with spray paint that weren't on the tree map.
Okay, and what were the total number of spray painted trees?
Good, I didn't count that. I
Okay.
was looking for what trees have X's on them that are not reflected on the map. Had to limit my focus.
Okay.
And I counted 4 trees that are dead that were not marked. This has all been arbitrary, piecemeal, and a very sloppy, slippery slope. And we have an opportunity now, even though there's gonna be some financial and other costs to repair the trust, get the best out of this once in a lifetime opportunity to genuinely improve Malcolm X Park, not diminish it. Okay, and that's really where we're at. We gotta commence that sooner than later. And it's about that, not the contractors. It's about that.
But not rescheduling the I'm sorry, let me just say this one thing, sir. Not to reschedule the contractors to come out and do the work when we were in the middle of a community dialogue and this briefing had not occurred, and we were told that the work was going to be put on pause. Then going forward and calling the contractor and rescheduling a date before we had this conversation.
So that's not exactly how it works. So I just want to be clear. When we met, I was very clear that we needed to meet soon, and people created a bunch of questions. I took those questions and we started trying to get them. Some of that's in this presentation. We haven't even gotten to those parts because there's a whole piece in here about where we could put up potential retaining walls. I think retaining walls are dicey, but you asked me to look into that, and we did. We said, right, but I'm saying, we brought it back. I can't meet you in that hill because I can't even get to that, right? So I think that, so I think what I'm saying is, there were questions asked, and we said, we didn't want to move it right away and have only the people who were there know about it, but not other people who were not there. So we said, how much time do we need to get the flyer out, to make sure everybody knows, and to answer the questions that folks raised? I didn't commit, and I'm gonna be really honest, I didn't commit to stopping the whole thing, because I was very clear about the financial implications. And I'm not saying that you can't say that I should now, but I wanna be really clear. I didn't go back on my word. I think I was really clear in that meeting, because I knew then
I think you were, but.
that if you stop construction altogether, you will pay not just for the trees, right? Because it all fits together. It's trees that are supposed to come down where a path is supposed to put in, and the path people are supposed to come 3 days after the tree people. If the tree people don't come, then I cancel the path people, I pay both of them. You see what I'm saying? So I knew that, and I'm not saying that we can't change, but I want to be clear, since we've had a conversation about trust. I did feel like on this note, I was really clear that I would push it back for us to have one conversation, but that was the limit of what I could do. If I make a bigger decision, and I'll have to have some conversation with the mayor, we are talking about I don't want to make up a number, but I know that I'm at 32,000 now. So I'm just like, I don't know how much each new day ends up in that conversation.
I just want to also be clear that if we put it on hold, enough
Yes,
construction has happened, the park
if we
will
put
not
on
be able
hold,
to be
we
reopened.
cannot commit that it will be open next spring when we said.
And not just that, we cannot reopen the park now because construction has started, right? So it's not, the park will not be able to be used. I just want to be clear, yeah.
This is
That's important.
this is 100.
No, all of the park, because right now what we've done.
It's all
makes the
started
park-
demo.
Like we pulled up, for instance, the field, so that right now, for instance, we've got heavy equipment going over the field. it's destructive, right?
Yes.
Once you pull it in, as an example, why some of the trees that were borderline, we were taking them down? Because we were like, if they die 2 years from now, we do not want to bring the same equipment back in to take them down and mulch them. Because in 2 years from now, in theory, the park is beautiful and gleaming. I don't want to run a backhoe over the park and cause damage to it. So that is some of the tension of like, if things were in questionable health, you're right. Some things that are in questionable health can live, but if they don't live, how will I take them down later if I don't want to run a caterpillar?
Well, if it's the only conifer, it's worth it. If
Can I
it's
just
the
say
only-
something that the city of Boston, I don't understand why this is happening. I mean, on Saturday, there were 2 events going on because the city of Boston has not paid attention to trees. So, you know, it was a choice of coming here or going to Crane Landing. And before that, it was Melanie Cass Boulevard. I mean, the city needs to understand that trees are crucial now more than ever.
Yeah.
And this should be factored in from the get-go.
Sure.
No, and I don't think that people disagree. People don't come to work at the Parks Department because they hate trees. Like, people agree with you. There's an agreement. I think where there is an agreement is where do we have place? There's no place where we're just taking out a tree just because. No, I'm saying, I agree with you. We should have said it to people more clearly. What I'm saying is, what I was trying to show you is every tree that is listed, I'm saying, every tree that is listed, we looked at it and said, okay, there's this, and then there's this. How do we best hold both of those?
The wrong week.
And I'm saying, what I'm saying is, I agree, we did not bring that conversation back to people in the
Don't bring
tree.
it back, let us be in it.
Right. What I'm saying is, at the point, once you design, then you start knowing. At the very beginning, you don't really know the answer to that, because you don't know what all the elements are, right? But there is a point at which, when you put all the elements together, right, you do know what it is, and we could have brought that back.
That's the process.
We better know now.
Hold on. So I guess where I'm challenged, y'all, is I'm trying to figure out the road forward. I'm hearing from you a need to have a much deeper conversation. And
With us.
I'm more than willing to do, I'm saying, I'm trying to understand what that means. One, how long are we talking, A? Because I don't like the phrase time is money, but in this reality, the more time, the more money I'm talking, right? I know, but I don't like it, but anyway, that's not, but I think, hold on. So I'm just saying, like, I'm not saying I'm not willing to unpack. We gotta have a space to do that. But I need to understand what we are talking about, and what the request is, because right now it's just more time without a clarity of what that looks like.
Can you ever ask the question?
Yes. Wait, sorry, you were standing up for a while, and then we'll come up here, because he was behind you for quite a while, yeah.
It's hard work sometimes. Nobody's mentioned COVID in the process in terms of the not ability to come out and do some parts of this, although 600 people died, that's amazing work, right? What I'm saying is that we spent some time in front of the school, right? We did that line of trees, we came most of the way down Dale Street to some agreement. You know, some things have changed and whatnot. Seems to me if we focus on that. I heard on Saturday that we could leave Honeysuckle Hill alone and still make the park ADA accessible.
No, we cannot make the park ADA accessible and leave it alone.
There are folks who felt that was possible.
No, I think I said really clearly, if we leave it alone, it won't be accessible.
You said we needed to have a discussion.
Right, but I'm just saying, I think I was clear about this one. If we leave it 100% alone, that area will not be accessible.
Couple of trees, so that is the part of the park we're talking about.
Right, so this part of the park is the question of what to make accessible. I think I said at that meeting, and I correct me if I'm wrong, I said all of the rest of the pieces are not up for discussion. I think I said that really clearly. because I don't have an option on these parts, right? The only part that we could leave completely untouched is Honeysuckle Hill.
Yeah.
Okay, so I just want to be clear. And if we leave it untouched, it is not ADA accessible. Okay, all right, okay. I thought you were saying we could leave it and it be an ADA. accessible. That's not- Okay,
That part's done. Part of the school is more or less done. They'll need to have both sides. We just need to talk about the trees, folks, and just move to the rest of them and have a process on that. Because with deep into this.
Yeah, but what trees? We need to know the trees, because some trees are very good.
The Reverend wants to ask a question.
yes, go ahead.
Excuse me, my name is Reverend Joseph Rocher, and I came into this process late. Somebody informed me about what was happening. What was happening, and it seems as though there have been a lot of good points that have been already made.
Mhm.
It's a multifaceted approach to this historical and spiritual part of our community.
Mhm.
Okay, and with the trees and with the ballpark and with the tennis courts or whatever like that. The thing about it is that one person spoke early in the conversation about engagement. Well, you can have any kind of definition. Go to Webster's definition and find out the definition of engagement, but there's something different about the definition and execution. And what I see from an outside observer is that the engagement is not there. It's been a long process. It's been like an $8.8 million process. It's been a process where the community has been engaged. But somewhere along that line, the community was not engaged. So for you to come here and to get consensus, and we know now you're saying, we understand it even before, that there are some constraints and restraints on you because contracts were already signed or whatever it might be. But what the Imam said is that sometimes you gotta sacrifice that worldly view because you need the community to be involved and engaged. Otherwise, when you go through, it's not gonna be a community engagement involvement thing. We understand that City Hall has made plans and things that it's done it before, we've seen gentrification before, and us moved out of our own communities.
Right.
We're saying, let us have a part of that narrative. Let
Okay.
us speak to that narrative as to how we need to implement. And as Brother Derek says, you will probably find more savings and that we come together, we talking together, you will probably find more savings and more assets and more pluses for the city of Boston and the mayor and City Hall that would contribute much more than the money that is saved.
Well,
Okay, so I do want to add with just one layer. One of the challenges in this moment is 600 people did participate in the process, and with the exception of about 5 people in this room, most of the people in the conversation now are not the same as the people in the conversation before. And so there is a tension where I'm asking myself, if I respond to this group of people, how is that received by the previous group of people who said some different things? So I'm just saying, like, some of them, Mike, you've been here since the beginning. Derek, you've been here. No, I hear you. No, I hear you not about trees. However, many of them, particularly some of the seniors, did talk a lot about accessibility. That's how we got into the whole drama, as you remember, about the pathway around the field. And so I'm just naming, hold on, hear me out. No, I'll come back, but I think the assertion that this room is the community and the previous rooms, I'm just trying to find a balance, because you're right, we didn't talk to them about trees, but they did, hold on. We did, but hold on. But there was a whole conversation about accessibility that came out of this conversation, and Derek, you were there, that I'm trying to ask, should I be paying attention to what was said around that and applying it over? And with all love and respect, I know there are definitely people who live in this neighborhood who are in the room, and there are a lot of people who don't, who are also in the room. And I'm trying to ask myself, if I respond to this room, how will that be received by some of the seniors that are not here tonight, but had some other layers?
Why don't you bear in mind that those seniors and me and the people we never have, you have over 650 respondents who said that trees and maintaining trees and shrubs was priority number 5. That group you're referring to now as being somehow at odds with this, possibly, is not. Because their priority number 5,
Mhm.
with your data
Right.
and process,
Yeah.
was trees, and priority number 11
And-
was accessibility.
Right, exactly.
And
Hear me out.
finally,
But you also know that that was raised in the meeting. At the very last meeting, as you recall, there were folks who lived close by who were pissed at that meeting. So I probably shouldn't use that term, but just keeping it real. That they were like, who are all these people that just showed up to the meeting? So I'm saying there is a tension here. And you might not feel that way, but then people call me and say that. So I'm just saying, I know where you stand, and you've been very clear. What I'm saying is, I just want people to recognize that there are folks who have been engaged in the process who are not here, and I'm trying to make sure that we can hear those voices.
It's fine. Just a second.
So we gotta. Okay, so I know I saw your hand for a while, so go ahead. Hold it, can we just, because this person's not got to speak
Come
out.
up and use the mic, it'll help the people who are on the Zoom.
Do you want to come use the mic so that people online can also hear you?
Hi, my name is Dodi Abi. I live on Humboldt Ave, and being involved, I've been involved in the process, the community review process, at least since 2019, 20?
2020, yep.
Okay, and I'm one of those who won the city. Sure. I'm one of those who won the city from the get-go, that the process was flawed. And you can ask her, and I told her that we needed to mobilize people and to engage them in a meaningful way on a variety of issues. Trees were one, okay? Safety, but safety didn't mean cutting down trees. No. Okay, we had specific ideas as to how to police the park, because many of us use the park on a daily basis. In fact, my neighbors, most of my neighbors, between number 4 Humboldt and 12, asked me to come here tonight to represent them. Why? They're working and so forth. But what I'm trying to say here is that from the initial design stage all the way to contracting, construction, consulting, the community has been ignored.
Correct.
Okay, I insisted, and city folks, department officials who are here can testify to that. I asked them to hire people from the community.
About that one.
Okay, because otherwise it will make the project look like something that came down from City Hall, shoved down people's throats. I lived in this community for 25 years. And I've been involved in many review processes. And I know what the pitfalls have been over the years. And so the city or its representatives, I'm not talking about you, Chief, because I know that this process, as you get involved, you try to do the right thing by the community. But for the most part, most of what I've seen at different stages of the design, I ignore requests or demands from the community. That has to change. I try to alert the city very early in the process, saying if you miss these steps, it will be more costly down the road. Because people here in this community will demand engagement and ultimately ownership of the project. Why? Because you will be gone, they will be left to live with the project, with the consequences of your decision. Why can't you listen to them now and see how you can make this project a net benefit from the community, from its perspective, not yours?
I want to defer to the counselor. I also know that Ms. Freeman, you can come next, yeah.
Here we go.
Good evening, Tanya Fernandez Anderson, City Councilor for District 7. I just wanted to be here in this process because I know that I've missed a few. And I apologize that I did not know these things were happening. And so I think that the chief has been doing a wonderful job. As soon as she realized the communications weren't happening, she has been proactive about communicating with our office, and I appreciate you for that. I know this process is not easy, and being in your seat right now and trying to mediate and come to a resolution is not easy, right? So I just want to say in the spirit of, and I think all of the allies, people that came from the outside, all of your letters that I received, I thank you so much for advocating on behalf of our trees, our community, and in the spirit of historically, how racist systems from local government have been in terms of interacting with community. I know that there's a distrust in this process and how we interact with our communities and how they've excluded us or not included us, right? So I look forward to representing you. This is not about me, but about us today. And I look forward to hearing from you, to talking with you, to meeting with you. And I think Chief Mariama is an ally. And I think that we can get together and slow down the process just a little bit, not to cost too much money, obviously. I know that we all want to save money. But I think in the interest of, how do we get there, that we extend a little bit of patience and grace and love and forgiveness to one another so that we can get there in a process that we can actually get to something practical. So I look forward to working with you. I work for you. And I look forward to hearing from you. I look forward to creating that space. And I think that city departments are doing, now that we're connecting, we are going to do everything together to include the community. And I'm here for you. So I hear you, I'm taking notes, I'm in the back, I'm sitting down, I'm taking notes, and I hear you loud and clear. My office is open. I look forward to working with you and for you. Thank you.
Okay, so it's 8:03 and we have a lot of hands. I think, so I also need to be transparent that for me, like I need to not be on this foot anymore, and pretty soon, and I need my husband to come pick me up. So I need to keep it real that I have a limited amount of time, partially because, of this, to stay over. And I know many of you know, I have done phone calls with you till 9 p.m. I have stayed on afterwards. Because of this, I can't do that. So here's what I want to move us. What I need to be clear about is what are we actually talking about? I know that I hear what people are saying, big picture. I want to get slightly tangible on what we are looking at in terms of the conversation. I want to be honest about what I can do, and I want to be honest about what I can't do. I want to be real that I do not have unlimited resources, right? I heard people's desire, for instance, to have folks hired from the community. The process that bids out parkland is run by the state. I don't have personally the freedom to change that as of right now, right? Like, it's not that I'm not saying I don't hear you. I'm telling you what power I do have and what power I don't have. I'm just keeping it real about that. So I think that the question is, what is the path forward that we are asking so that I can respond to that and we can figure out where that goes?
I have a recommendation.
Okay, so you have a recommendation, Derek.
To that.
Okay, do you mind if Derek puts out this recommendation? Do you also have a recommendation?
Yes, I do.
Okay,
Okay, one.
so we're gonna hear two, we have another proposal. Okay, so Derek will put a proposal forward. We'll go to the imam, you have a proposal, maybe those two will come together. We'll hear one more proposal and we'll try to get to a clarity about next steps. Are you also raising your hand to put forward a proposal? Okay. Anybody else that wants it? So here's what we'll do. We'll hear this proposal and maybe afterwards that will be what people are already thinking, or we can build off of it. So go ahead, Derek.
This is a proposal both for the city and community members and friends.
Okay, yeah, no, that's right, hold on.
Open the door.
Yeah. Because it's set centrally, correct? The more bodies that are in here, the more, we create our own heat too, so let's open the door, okay.
So as of about a little over a week ago, we now have pending 501c3 called Community Stewards and Friends of Malcolm X Park. Now, it's called Community Stewards because it wants to partner with the city and other people now and going forward in getting the maximum feasible benefits.
Okay.
With concern for time, money, and equally, if not more important, outcome. Those, the three-legged stool, time, money, and outcome. That group is willing to partner and engage with the city and anyone else who wants to address in a timely, cost conscious fashion, time conscious fashion, and results conscious fashion to get the best result that's possible from this point going forward. Now it's on the city to accept that.
Okay, I can hear that. I guess what I'm trying to figure out is, and maybe we'll keep going. What does that look like? Like, I hear that, I'm appreciative of that. I think, as an example, are you saying a smaller group of us would meet, create a proposal, bring it back to me? What are you, are you saying we meet
I don't
with the
know for sure, but my
stewards?
assumption is that most of the people in this community, and who are at this meeting tonight or previous meetings, would not oppose there being a standing or even an ad hoc representative group that were, because everybody doesn't want to have these conversations about these trees or anything else. But those who want to and who can, on behalf of the best interest of the community and the city jointly, ought to be given an opportunity for that talent and that energy and that effort to influence the outcome, the cost, and the time that it takes to get.
Okay, so what I'm hearing from you, I just want to clarify, that there's a smaller group of folks that are leading the stewards. That I'm assuming you're saying some folks from the Parks Department, some folks from the stewards would sit down, come up with a proposal and bring it back. Is that the beginning of what you're suggesting? Okay, so then that gets us started. Now the question is like what the timeline is and how do we decide who's in that? Did everyone have an opportunity to join the stewards? Do we open it up? Like
Yes.
Okay, so we can't, but like a productive outcome-driven meeting can't be,
Set a number
you know,
of how many
60 people.
How many people who are either members or not of the community stewards and friends is the right number.
Okay, so we are starting from a proposal that a smaller group of folks that are part of the stewards and friends. My assumption is that most of them live in the neighborhood, yes? Okay, so what if we said 5 members of the stewards, 5 members of the Parks Department, sit down together, look at things in detail. Try to come up with.
We have 6.
Even dozen, you know, I believe in the power of 12 people.
Is Kamala Harris gonna bring this up?
No, we're not gonna do that. We're not, so I'm fine with the idea of 6 and 6, either way, however that works. Sit down and look in detail.
And our council person.
Okay, I do wanna know, like, can you be the tiebreaker? You be number, okay, there we go, okay. So 6 and 6 plus our tie-breaking counselor, sit down, look in greater detail at these things, bring a proposal back to a larger community meeting, because I don't think we should not bring it back.
And when would you want this done?
I mean, that's what I'm trying to figure out as quick as possible. I'm trying to clarify what the steps are and then create a timeline. We leave here with some clarity about what's going to happen. Because what we cannot do is leave and have another meeting to figure out what we're gonna do, to come back like that's not viable. So we have now proposals 6 and 6, 13 Baker's dozen.
Only trees that would
talking about, or is
No,
there
we talk
any?
about the whole-
Yeah, because there should be shrubs.
So hold on, I think, shrubs, what you're saying, when you say we're talking about the whole thing, what are you saying?
Okay, I need to stand.
Hold on,
and say
because-
something.
Okay, go, hold on, so.
I would be remiss to walk out of this room
Mhm,
and not say anything about environmental impacts
mhm.
of what the redesign of the park. And there is another element that is going to cause some real serious environmental impacts that are going to impact groundwater,
Okay,
safety for children, more higher temperatures.
okay,
And I know you don't
hold
want
on.
to let me finish.
Well, the only reason I don't wanna open it is
No,
because
I-
one, we're at the end of the meeting, so if we're gonna talk about this, we can bring it back into that,
I just wanted
meeting.
to make sure that this.
Are you talking about turf?
I'm talking about turf. People have been burned and it reaches temperatures
I
of
hear you.
200 degrees. And the toxins will leach into
I-
our groundwater.
No, I hear you. I
So
said,
I
we
just
had a
want that
whole community meeting, just about, like, an hour that we're back and forth just about turf.
One whole hour.
And you decided-
It was virtual during.
It was in the middle of a pandemic, you could not do it in person. So,
And
hold on,
we actually have had at least 2 public meetings.
hold on. We're not gonna try to like unpack all this right now. I need to keep it real, y'all. My plate is, sorry. So I'm saying, we are trying to figure out this proposal. You can put that forward to that group and then we can figure out how to deal with it. But like, let's not try to adjudicate that right now. We've had, we agreed. No, I hear you. I know, but I'm just saying like, we didn't come, like, everybody didn't agree and we made a decision to move forward. So like, we can talk about it, but it needs to come in that meeting. So 13 people. And Mommy, you said you had something to add.
I'm in perfect agreement with this, what I had in mind, but
Yeah.
what I'd like us all to pay attention to and to agree on, that we know so much more, you and all of us, about the impact of this effort. And so now we can't, the 600 people before, if they understood what we know now, they might have a reassessment of what they're thinking.
Right.
So we all are now better educated about the process and about what's going on and the impact. I think we need to take all that information and now reassess what we want to do. So we want to see some changes that you're hitting. And we want to support you with that. And we just want to go over it again with the 6 and 6 and that girl back there. Our representative, and just reassess what we're gonna do and let's get started on this.
Okay, and so we'll be in there.
Yeah.
There are limits. I want to be really clear to how much you can change a project once it's been bid out. So I just want to keep it real with y'all. You can talk about it in the meeting, but we cannot blow it up and change it.
They're closing soon.
Make it
So we gotta wrap it
real.
up.
What's happening is what was specified. Because when I was up on the hill here yesterday,
Mhm.
there was a big backhoe came and pulled out the part of the sidewalk that you say is inaccessible and supposed to there, but should not be being touched. They're creating more work for themselves.
No, we talked about at the beginning. I'm gonna identify who that person is, because whoever they said they were, it can't be true. We don't own a backhoe. So what, Lit Parks Department?
No, what I heard was mistake.
No, I hear you, but I'm saying, I know, because I know what I've asked for in the budget, and I know what I'm getting, and I know what I'm not getting. And we just don't have that kind of equipment. So,
No, those pathways are supposed to be repaid.
right, so we're not gonna reopen it. We are trying to figure out the process by which we're closing this conversation. So 13
They did
people are
not
gonna
take
meet.
out a pathway they weren't.
What I'm gonna suggest, go ahead. Do you wanna add to this process? Because I don't wanna open a new conversation. I need to close this down.
I'd like to see representation at the top, like real deal. I don't see nobody here that actually represents the community. Real deal.
I mean-
Except for you.
I mean, I was like, I grew up in that part, so
I'm talking
And-
about the decision makers right
Okay,
now.
we'll think about
Not look like the people
Yeah.
that live here, all right?
Okay,
And don't overtalk me.
I hear you.
I'm not
I hear you.
finished. I'm not finished.
okay.
So it's like, we
Close
need
it
to
down.
have people that are in the decision-making process that actually are connected to the community, so they're not just making some quick decision that has nothing to do with them. It's not their community, it's ours. And they're just making decisions like, and not caring about the impacts it's gonna have on the people who actually have to live here.
Okay, so, yeah, yeah.
So, I hate saying that. Shut up.
I'm Bernard Spoke. I've been a liaison, the city hired me to do some work on the project. And one thing I just want to say is,
there's a shitload I didn't know before this process happened that I learned as things are going along. You know what I mean? And I get everybody's frustrated. There's a bunch of other stuff I could get into. But one thing I want to say is like, we all know there's not a lot of communication between the city and the community members. As a community member who's been a part of the process, I know that's more fucked up than anything else. Excuse my language, I'm just trying to be frank and stop standing. So I say that to say, like, the more that you're involved in the process, the more you get to learn. And I can tell that by some of the questions that people ask that they weren't involved in the process, because otherwise you wouldn't ask some of the questions that you were asked. Furthermore, there was an opportunity for a lot of people to be involved in the process on several occasions. I know that I was there. That's how I got there with the process, and I was there when other people didn't join the process. And I say all of that to say, give the woman some slack. What's happened is what's happened. That's that on that. All we're trying to do is figure out a solution. It's hot. I'm tired of hearing people complain, just being honest, and I'd like to get something accomplished. So if we're gonna roll, let's roll. If not, just bring it up at the next meeting, because we all had a chance to do this prior to. You may have missed that, and if you did, I'm sorry for that. But we are where we are right now. So I just want to keep it pushing and just not dwell on certain things over and over.
I also think we need to acknowledge that the folks that run this space, who've given it to us, also want to go home. Some of them have been here all day. And I'm glad we're able to meet in person. I'm glad we're not solely on Zoom. And there are limitations to, you know, I'm asked, so I think, okay.
The work stoppage is still in place. Just want to be clear with that understanding. The work stoppage in place.
So I.
What we agreed on the day that we met that Saturday is that the basketball court, tennis court, and all that was going to continue.
So this is what so that's what I'm saying, like, we agreed on that, but then I feel like I'm hearing people say no to that. So that's why I'm like feeling unclear. No, because some of those elements can't move forward and not affect trees. So that's where there's a tension. Like, for instance, you can't do the splash pad work if the tree that's where you're putting the box is still there. So I'm saying, I think that what I'm getting, what I committed to originally was only a conversation around Honeysuckle Hill. Then we came into this meeting and I've heard multiple people say, open the whole thing back up again. So like, but what I'm trying to understand is, I said I'm willing to talk about Honeysuckle Hill. The meeting happens and now I feel like what people are saying is open it all up. And I can't keep work going in the park if random tree here or the other tree, one tree here or one tree there, if all of it is open to conversation. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I think that I want to be clear that, not to you particularly, but I also have some trust issues, because I feel like I said, this is what I was going to do. I thought we all walked away for an agreement of that. And then I come here and people are saying, no, reopen it all. And that's not what I agreed to do when I agreed to the meeting, because I was trying to balance both keeping the work going in the other areas, which we all agreed to, and having a conversation about this one space. I came back with other things that were not, that I could have, kept going based on what I said, but like the stuff on Dale Street, I realized there was a way to potentially leave those and keep the work going and match. But like, if I don't allow some of these to happen, work can't keep going. So I'm just saying, like, keep it real. I'm trying to understand what we're saying, and I can't pay people to come out and take down 2 trees, then come back later and take down 3 trees and come back. Like, we pay them to come based on the full scope, so we don't pay them again and again and again. So I just want people to understand there is an impact to delay, and the impact is I can't keep moving with the rest of this if all trees are back in the conversation, because almost every element has between 1 and 3 trees that are impacted to do what we said we were going to do.
So the process that.
Yeah, so we need to go. Here's what I'm gonna suggest.
No, I'm sorry, I just need a clarification.
So just really, the part that we're trying to get to is, there's a holistic effort here. Imam said that, Derek has said that.
Yep.
Jose throughout the process by which this meeting we're talking about having, we can do the process that Jose threw out by going around and looking at what we're actually affecting. So we have to stop the work in order to get to that meeting, in order to come back with a holistic plan. That's the bottom line. Tomorrow.
All right, so you all can meet. I will have to be on FaceTime because I can't actually get around the park.
Can we get someone to park?
All right, let me figure out if we can do something tomorrow. No, we can't. So I'm already owed them a whole bunch of money I ain't paid them, right? Like I gotta figure out how much more money.
City contracts, the city contracts, many times they suspend these city contracts and they'll come back.
No, they'll come. Hold on, the thing is, they'll come, but if I have them come, but every
I
time I have
think
them
you just
come.
said you would volunteer.
Did you just say, no, he did not?
You did not?
I said, I'd be there.
Oh.
That's what I'm saying, y'all. And I'm not mad at you. I'm not mad at you. We signed a contract with you about what you were gonna do. If I change that contract midstream, you don't just keep this, I mean, that's not how I do either. So here's what I'll say. A meeting can happen tomorrow. I don't know if it can be out here. I don't know what its depth is because there've been questions asked. Some of them I don't think we can have by tomorrow afternoon. But I think what we can do is a call tomorrow, at least a call, to figure out how to map out this process. We don't gotta go home, but we do gotta get up out of here. So, we will exchange information, get clarity about where we're going. It just was